Now let's take a look at how this information is gathered and what some of the concerns are regarding the work of primatologists. As I said in an earlier lecture, physical anthropologists or biological anthropologists are different from biologists and zoologists. How so, you might ask? Well, they expand their studies to include notions of language or call systems and how those change over time, the role that behavior or sociobiology plays in the survival of a group. And then they ask questions about technology and group social structure. Well, to get at any of these concepts, fieldwork is important. So how is fieldwork planned and how is the information gathered? Well, the first thing that a student of anthropology must do is to look where his or her information will fit. In order to do so, they look at previous research. Next, they want to plan their study, both financially and practically. Following this, they go out and collect the data. This is done through direct observation. As these students of anthropology collect their information, they will do so with a frame of reference. They'll do so by incorporating or applying specific models of knowledge that they have gained over their training. The knowledge that they gain or the data that they acquire, then they will fit into a local model, a model of the biological history of the colony or community or troop or group that they are studying. After all this is over, they will begin to situate their findings in a much larger body of knowledge. This body of knowledge will be maintained by their peers, by others who are doing research in the field. And then finally, they will attempt to develop a tool, like a textbook, for example, to share their knowledge with all students of anthropology. They will produce an analytic, instructional tool. Let's take a closer look now at 3 areas of analysis that the work of primatologists, day in and day out, will contribute to. First, the work of a primatologist, of a physical anthropologist looking at living primates, and to an extent the fossil record, will give us a deeper understanding of the unique anatomy that primates living today or living 1,000 years ago possess. Next, they'll address social behaviors. They will attempt to contribute to what is known of these unique mammals and how these particular advanced complex behaviors helped those living in larger groups to survive. Lastly, the work of primatologists, whether they're looking at the living or the dead, will help other researchers understand how all of these puzzle pieces fit together. What I mean by that is they will attempt to reconstruct the phylogeny of living and deceased primates. Phylogeny, in this case, relates to their evolutionary heritage. One of the most challenging questions that a biological anthropologist, such as a primatologist, will have to address is how the biology and the behavior interact with one another in such a way as to promote survival. In order to understand this dilemma, let's take a look at the kind of culture that we might choose to associate with primates, and we'll juxtapose that to the term culture as it applies to living Homo sapiens. As you will note, these 2 definitions are similar but very different. The first one, the one on the top of the slide, is often applied to the complex behaviors of primates. Culture, in this case, is behavioral. It's a behavioral variant caused by social modification. It produces individuals who will in turn modify the behavior of others in the same way. Do you note what's missing here? The elephant in the room in this case is learning. Relate that to the definition of human culture that you find at the bottom of the slide. This is the definition used by originally Edward Tyler, and a definition that has been adopted by most, if not all, anthropologists. Human culture is a complex whole which includes knowledge, beliefs, art, morals, law, custom, and other rules of behavior that are learned and transmitted from one generation to the next. Learning. It's very important. It's what ultimately separates us as human primates from non-human primates. Let's take a moment to review some of the nomenclature, which also poses a controversial problem when we're comparing human primates to non-human primates. Let's also take a moment to review how, in this case, living members of genus Homo are classified into this Linnaean system of taxonomy. Finally, let's take a look at some of the important characteristics of living primates that make them true primates according to modern science. First, we recognize a shortened snout that contains at least 3 variations in dental morphology. We recognize a very unique expression to the eye orbits. They face forward and are protected on the side by a post-orbital bar, allowing for stereoscopic vision. We recognize 3 bones of the middle ear that are housed within the growth and development of the lateral portions of the skull, the petrosobulla. We recognize the presence of collarbones or clavicles. We recognize fingernails and toenails instead of claws. We recognize 2 separate bones in the forearm and the lower leg. We recognize a tendency toward vertical posture. We recognize a trend toward longer lives and longer periods of infant dependency. And we recognize enlarged brains with increased areas devoted to seeing and decreased areas devoted to smelling. And lastly, given our controversy regarding what definition of culture we should use, we have behavior. In this case, we recognize primates as having very complex social behaviors and very complex social relationships that are reinforced by things such as grooming and specific kinds of call systems. As is the case with language, many higher level primates will modify their call systems based upon a variety of external or environmental factors. So now a final look at the order Primates. Again, a bit of a review from our last time together. We recognize 2 suborders, Prosimiae and Anthropoidea. Humans are part of a superfamily distinction, which has 3 families within it. This is Hominoidea. The 3 families, Hylobatidae, Pongidae, and Hominidae. That's why humans are recognized to be hominids, living hominids. Within this, we have a genus and a species distinction, genus Homo, species Sapiens, and based upon recent research and a lot of what we have learned through the reconstruction of the genome of Neanderthals, we are recognized also as having a subspecies, in this case Sapiens. So we are today classified, according to primatological taxonomic models, as Homo sapiens sapiens. Here is a pictorial reference for you. It breaks things down, in this case the order Primates down, into its various suborders, infraorders, superfamilies, and families. Now let's look back at behavior for just a moment and see what's special about hominids. When you compare hominids to other living or extinct primates, there's a few important characteristics that we have to make note of, in this case having to do with how they are organized into their community or their society. In fact, when we take a closer look at how primates are complex with regards to how they organize themselves, we may have a good model for the earliest expression of human culture. As you will note by looking at this particular slide, there's 2 all-important features that make hominid social organizational patterns, and really all complex primatological organizational patterns, very important. It's key to their survival. First, being flexible, having an open group formative structure. Sometimes this is referred to as fission and fusion, the idea that we can have members adopted into a particular group and we can have members actively leaving or choosing to leave a group. Another component in this case is that complex primatological communities are internally structured. They have a very strong and noticeable social hierarchy. Finally, we have really what is considered today to be the building block for modern complex human culture, which is the pair bond. The pair bond is a functional unit of any primatological society, and often the first and most important pair bond that's established between two or more individuals is a mother-offspring relationship. Anthropologists across the world have attempted to apply a primatological model to understand the most simplistic and basic qualities to how humans organize themselves and how they create, in this case, socially cohesive units. One area of research was pioneered by anthropologist Julian Stewart, who used an ecological approach in understanding how and why small groups of human bands have thrived in some of the most arid and remote places on the planet. He talked about the importance of marriage as an alliance-building ritual, gathering together extended families from across a scattered landscape. This is a brand of social organization that is often referred to as group exogamy. Stewart, like others, recognized that this tradition of seeking mates outside of one's natal group was a uniquely primatological characteristic. Working in the late 1950s and early 1960s, Julian Stewart was joined by other cultural ecologists such as Leslie White and Peter Murdoch as they probed into this question of how this unique brand of social organization helped human beings to be a global social force, even in light of the Ice Age.